India's economy grew more than 8% over the last year. This makes it the fastest growing major economy in the world, even after a rougher than expected election. So where did this growth come from? Investors are asking questions like, is this sustainable? And what does the investment window for India look like? We're going to break it all down for you right here on UBS Trending. Hi, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastore. Thank you for being with us. My guest today is Yoo-Jung Oh. She is an investment director on the Asian equities team at Aberdeen. Yoo-Jung, nice to have you join me on the program. Great to see you.
Thank you very much. Hello.
So, Yoo-Jung, you know, the story from India, it's been a really interesting one, and it's been fascinating to watch the country grow and change over the past several years. So just from a very macro perspective, what do you see as the forces behind these changes that are happening there?
Yeah, you're right. And I think investing in any emerging market is really always a balancing act between that promise of growth and the known unknowns of the volatilities of that emerging market. And I think India, as you say, has really been a great market for the past couple of years. And that's really largely thanks to three drivers, in our opinion. Firstly, really that rapid growth of the middle class consumer in India. So not only has India overtaken China to have the largest population in the world, but the dollar value of consumption spending is also increasing. And India is forecast to become the third largest consumer globally before the end of this decade, third only to the US and China. I think secondly, there's been very supportive government policies as well that's really ushered in an era of capital and infrastructure investment. And that's really helped the Indian economy to really benefit at the moment from several years of painful reforms that it's had to go through. And it's also benefiting from that global offshoring trend that has come at the same time as well. And I think lastly, India has been a great investor in digitalization and that energy transition story as well. So India's digital stack has created this single open software platform for India consumers and businesses. And again, I think that sets a great sort of scene for companies to really try and build their businesses out into the future.
Yeah, and if you look at, let's kind of take it now from the ground up and looking at the citizens who are living in India. Clearly, as you said, the government has truly invested in technology, infrastructure, all the things that on paper add to a better standard of living. So have the citizens really seen that? Is that something that you can see on the ground?
Yeah, so I think if we stick with this digital stack as an example, then that was a government-led initiative to create this digital sort of open platform to support India's future needs. And I think that was a very good forward-thinking initiative that India put in place. It started with Aadhaar, which was their national digital identification process, which has been rolled out to over 1 billion people in the space of just 2 or 3 years. Whereas if you look at some of the more developed countries in the world, we're still struggling to get our e-passports rolled out to our full populations, which are nowhere near as big as the size of India's population. But having that digital ID system has really helped them to allow processing of online payments, to help with digital banking. It improves data availability. And going forwards, they're going to build on that with health services as well. So in a couple of years' time, a patient in India can have their medical records transfer with them to any hospital they go to in India once their hospital records are linked to their Aadhaar ID as well. So I think all of these things are really helping Indian citizens to benefit from that digitalization trend as well. I also think if you travel to India, simply as a tourist as well, but obviously this affects the citizens on the ground as well, but infrastructure, that's been such a big change in India over the past decade. If I think about the last time I went to the Taj Mahal, that journey was a 6-hour journey on this road that was full of cars and animal traffic as well. But I went earlier this year and it's become a super sort of 6-lane highway that allowed me to get to the Taj Mahal in just under 3 hours. So I think all the support and the planning to get that sort of infrastructure in place is again helping Indian citizens to go about their daily needs better as well. The day I visited Taj Mahal, actually, earlier in the year, was the opening of the new metro station at the Taj as well. So I think that continued investment into allowing ease of mobility is really going to benefit the citizens too.
Yeah, and from somebody who sits all the way here in New York on the other side of the planet, it feels like everything was happening almost overnight. One day it was, as you said, 6 hours to go anywhere, and the next there are metro stations and all these modern ways of being transported around a very large country. But on the spending side, did the government use a lot of leverage when they were investing in the economy? Where did the funding come from?
Yeah, so actually, India has relatively low debt to GDP. And I think keeping credit costs low is, again, very important to this government as well. And actually, that's something that will link into some of the service offerings that the digital stack can provide in future too. With such a growth economy, I think funding for some of these infrastructure projects has come from private investors. The private equity market in India is still very active as well. And I think that provides good funding source for the economy. So India hasn't had to over leverage itself as some of its other emerging market peers have done in the past. I also think there's a very strong banking sector within India, and that's also helping to fund businesses much more at the grassroots level. So perhaps not for the large infrastructure projects that tend to attract a lot of foreign investors. But if you're an Indian business, and I think there's a lot of new creative businesses coming up in India to serve a new demand as well, then these companies are benefiting from that strength of the financial system in India as well.
Great, thank you, Yujung. So interesting, when we talk about India, our chief investment office here, our emerging markets team, does actually think that the country is likely to remain well supported because of that resilient macroeconomic backdrop, and they also expect further upside in Indian equities and bonds through the rest of the year. But in your opinion, when you look at the bigger picture, has the investment opportunity played itself out, or are there more opportunities ahead?
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. And I think the only way for you to really know whether there are still opportunities left to invest in is to have that regular interaction with Indian corporates, to be able to travel there, to be able to gather your own information on the ground. And that's really one of the strengths of having a team that can access the India market. It's obviously much more easy to travel there from Singapore than it would be from the US. So I think understanding that there are quality names that have been investor favorites over the last decade that have helped India grow over the last decade, and also understanding what those same businesses are doing to make sure that they are still winners for the next decade. And then also having your eyes on that collection of impressive new businesses that we alluded to before. These are new sort of business teams. They're more nimble. The management teams have all been educated overseas or at the best universities in India as well. And these companies are really looking to challenge that status quo that the incumbents have enjoyed so far. So they're creating demand rather than just looking to follow it. So I think really having your eyes on these types of opportunities, having your eyes on what's coming up through the private equity market as well, these are all good ways to keep finding new investment opportunities for those that are willing to do the groundwork. And I really emphasize that I think one of the reasons we make it a point to travel to India so often and to meet with as many decision makers and business leaders as possible, that's really one of the big benefits of being able to collect information and make your decisions based on that data.
Excellent. Thank you, Yujung. And, as we're getting towards the end of our conversation, of course, there's always the flip side of the risk, right? There's a risk in any investment. And given that there's so much unknown on the horizon, even when you think back to what's happening here in the U.S., Donald Trump, if he gets reelected, has promised tariffs on China, first of all, and he hasn't said anything about India. But is there any risk to additional tariffs put on countries outside of the U.S.? Are there any other risks that you're looking out for when it comes to investing in India?
Yes, of course, there are always risks of this nature. And I think that the US election later in the year is a big focal watch point for all investors, not just in Asia, but probably globally as well. But there is a big link to the US, to a lot of the trade economies here in Asia. And I think so far for the Indian markets, they have been an indirect beneficiary of some of the orders that have come out executive orders that have come out from the US over the past couple of years. So we mentioned that global offshoring, diversification trade, and that certainly helped the Indian manufacturing services companies to benefit from the increasing need of global companies to diversify their supply chains. I think one of the other very common questions that I'm asked from investors is really whether the Indian market has already priced in everything good that it's got going for it, or if there's still more to go. And I think the strength in that domestic economy has left the Indian market looking fairly stretched in terms of valuations, if you're looking at price to earnings multiples in particular. But there are still some parts, particularly in the small cap and mid cap company space, where valuations do look very, very expensive indeed. I think what we try and again stress to our investors is that there's no denying that valuations have run. Indian markets have hit record highs this year, but there is an inherent strength to the economy in India. They've still got that high single-digit GDP growth that you mentioned at the start of the program, and we're expecting corporate earnings growth to be around the 10-12% mark as well. So I think that structural growth story is still intact. And that supports what looks at first glance like perhaps overly stretched valuations. So we are still committed to investing in India. And I think if you find the right companies with the right level of growth and with the right type of business model that can succeed over the next decade as well, and then it's still a very interesting country to be invested in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yoo-Jung. And by the way, your view at Aberdeen is very similar to the view here in CIO, where we expect the Indian stock market's valuation to remain elevated. And as you said, expect mid to high single-digit returns in the second half. So thanks for joining us, Yoo-Jung. Great to have you on the show. And it is a really fascinating and interesting conversation to talk about India, especially as far as it's come over the last decade or so. So great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again. That was Yoo-Jung Oh, Investment Director on the Asian Equities team at Aberdeen. And for more information on what they're doing and, of course, what other partners are doing, including our Chief Investment Office here at UBS, visit our website at ubs.com/views. Plus, you can follow us on social media, including our Instagram channel. Follow us at UBS Trending. And as always, if you have any questions about your portfolio, make sure you're talking with your financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. And remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. We'll see you soon.